We all love cartoons, but how many of us actually know the history of cartoons? Not many of us, but that's about to change. So let's jump into a brief history of cartoons. Before we can dive into the wild world of modern cartoons, with their highfalutin color and HD sass, we gotta wind back the clock a bit to the OG of animation, drawing. Yep, that's right, drawing. Cave walls were the first cinemas where ancient humans doodled their hieroglyphics all over their stone canvas. These were like prehistoric PowerPoints telling stories about the latest woolly mammoth hunt, or gossiping about who drank too much dirt beer at Grosselzog's party. But as great as illustrations were, and continue to be, everything evolves, and over time, illustrations became animations. Animation is where illustration meets motion. So for that, we have to fast forward to the 1800s, where the first animation tools were created. The first tool was invented in 1832, and it was called the Phenakistoscope. The Phenakistoscope. The Phenakistoscope. The Phenakistoscope. There we go. Because I guess Picture Mover was just too damn simplistic. For this to work, you needed to draw a series of pictures, each with subtle differences, slap them onto a wheel, park it in front of a mirror, and give it a twirl. Voila! You had movement. Magic? No. Just good old-fashioned optical illusions, and a knack for spinning things without getting dizzy. Then, just as folks had mastered the tongue twister that is Phenakistoscope, the Zoetrope rolled in, which was essentially the Phenakistoscope 2.0. It was just a bit more effective and had a name that was 10% easier to pronounce. But we're not done yet, because in 1877 there was yet a third evolution to these animation tools, with the invention of the Praxinoscope. Goodness gracious. Another P-word parade. Much like the Zoetrope was the evolution of the Phenakistoscope, the Praxinoscope was the evolution of the Zoetrope. It was like the deluxe edition, with mirrors and motion all wrapped up in a cylinder, because why not make it round? It was still based on the same premise, though, using pictures with slight differences mixed with mirrors to create the illusion of motion. Together, these three ridiculous words are the great-great-grandparents of animation. But Emile Cole is the official father of animation. In 1908, instead of using wheels and mirrors, he used a camera, and he made the first animated film, Phantasmagorie, a French word that loosely translates to weird, dreamlike figures. It didn't star a man or an elephant, but it did star their hand-drawn doppelgangers. This thing inspired future animators to start raiding their kids' toy boxes and using everything from Play-Doh to sock puppets to make their own little cartoons. There's even a Russian film from 1912 called The Cameraman's Revenge, about insects having an affair that uses dead bugs. Because, I guess the store had no dolls. Regardless, the film was made, proving two things. One, even several early cartoons were made for adults, and two, animation loves innovation, even if the innovation is weird and gross. Animation became a popular pursuit within the entertainment industry, and this led to the golden age of animation, where animation began evolving and incorporating storytelling techniques. This is when Disney started getting involved, and in 1928, they thought, hey, why not take a mouse and make him the captain of a boat? And thus, Steamboat Willie burst onto the scene as the first animated film to have synchronized sounds. It's also known for introducing Mickey Mouse to the world, which eventually became Disney's most iconic character and the star of a bazillion lunchboxes. But you know how business works. When one company is doing well, it inspires other companies to jump on the bandwagon. Warner Brothers crashed Disney's little party with the Looney Tunes gang, where characters like Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck dropped anvils on each other's heads, and pointed out to the general public that duck season is an actual thing. While Disney focused on creating G-rated cartoons for families that were more wholesome than a glass of milk, Warner Brothers was like the cool uncle slipping in jokes that flew over kids' heads, but had the adults chuckling behind their coffee cup. They included a lot of humor and social commentary into their cartoons, which has become a staple of modern animation. Disney and Warner Brothers weren't the only two studios creating cartoons, though. Others, like Paramount, created legendary animation as well, like Popeye the Spinach Glutton Sailor Man and Betty Boop the Black and White Seductress. Around the 1930s, Technicolor hit the scene. It allowed for color to be added to animation for the first time. This was like giving cartoons a full-blown makeover. It turned the drab black and white world into a disco dance floor filled with colors. Disney had exclusive rights to Technicolor at first, and they were super greedy with it too. Other companies would be like, "Excuse me, Disney, can we use the Technicolor?" And Disney was like, "Nah, dog. Those crayons are ours." And they rubbed it in everybody's face when they released the first color animation in 1932, Flowers and Trees. But once their contract was up, Warner Brothers jumped into the fray and started turning out their own color cartoons like Merry Melodies. And suddenly cartoons had kaleidoscope vision. In the 1950s, TV further revolutionized animation. William Hanna and Joseph Barbera worked together to create animations for TV. They were like animation's premier tag team. They created tons of legendary cartoons, such as The Flintstones, a cartoon that focused on a family living in prehistoric times. Or The Jetsons, which was also about a family, only this one living in the future, with flying cars and snarky robot maids. These shows combined animation with the elements of the sitcoms at the time, using characters to reflect and make fun of common life experiences. Then came the launch of the Saturday morning cartoons era, which lasted nearly 50 years. This is where TV networks used Saturday mornings to air a series of cartoons in blocks from early morning to afternoon. It was the golden buffet of kiddie entertainment, and it became part of American culture. Kids would park themselves in front of the TV with a big bowl of sugar O's and indulge themselves in cartoon after cartoon. From Fat Albert teaching life lessons, to Garfield showing us the virtues of laziness and lasagna, to Scooby-Doo proving that every mystery can be solved by a dog that doesn't say much but still seems to have a better vocabulary than most toddlers. Or even the Smurfs, who were constantly stalked by a really creepy man named Gargamel. Luckily, the Smurfs smurfed the Smurf out of that mother Smurfer every episode. Meanwhile, across the globe, Japan was establishing itself in the genre. Japan had been creating animated films since 1917, one of which was The Dull Sword, which was about a samurai that buys a dull sword. But Japan really carved out its niche with anime, which are cartoons that use a unique animation style with complex storytelling. And this led to classics like Astro Boy and Speed Racer that became popular even in America. Over in Europe, they were brewing up their own cartoons, with several countries each creating their own unique styles of animation. Europe produced popular animations like Tintin, Danger Mouse, and Wallace and Gromit. The 90s were the renaissance of cartoons, with plenty of popular cartoons influencing art and society. In the early 90s, Disney mixed animation with a sprinkle of Broadway and released animated films like The Little Mermaid, The Lion King, Aladdin, and Beauty and the Beast. These weren't just cartoons, they were like full-scale musicals, with animals and fish and candlesticks, all singing with better harmony than most of the boy bands at the time. Animation-heavy networks like Nickelodeon and Cartoon Network became popular, and aired tons of iconic cartoons like Rugrats, Space Ghost, and Ren and Stimpy. Animation even returned to prime time in the 90s, with The Simpsons making it cool for adults to watch cartoons again. Much like the Flintstones had done decades prior, The Simpsons became a mirror of society at the time, albeit a funhouse mirror with lots of exaggeration and donuts. The Simpsons was so popular that it still airs today as America's longest-running sitcom. It's been creating new episodes for over 30 years. Even MTV jumped on the animation train when they decided that two dim-witted teams, named Beavis and Butthead, would become the philosophers for the slacker generation. As the 90s rolled towards the new millennium, South Park swaggered onto the scene, taking social commentary to a whole new level. It didn't just push the envelope, it set the envelope on fire, threw in a couple of F-bombs, and then made an episode about the envelope's tragic backstory. It's consistently been controversial, but at the same time, beloved for its witty reflection of society. And just like Disney had started the decade with plenty of compelling animated films, Pixar was looking to end the decade with plenty of its own. Pixar began using computer animation to create cartoons, and released the first computer animated film in 1995 with Toy Story. This was like a CGI bat signal to other studios, because once they saw how successful Toy Story was, a lot of them started using computer animation as well, with DreamWorks releasing films like Shrek later on. If Disney and Warner Brothers were the Edison and Tesla of animation, then Pixar and DreamWorks were like the Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos of animation. Because everybody has a computer nowadays, animation spread like a viral cat video. It wasn't reserved for Saturday morning cereal binges anymore. The popularity of the internet, along with accessible animation software, led to webcomics, GIFs, short-form videos, and essentially turned anybody who wanted to be into an animator. And now the future's so bright, we gotta wear VR headsets. Animation is diving headfirst into VR, AR, and AI, allowing animators to create more immersive experiences. So essentially, we're living in a world where we're not only going to be watching cartoons, we're essentially going to be living in them. Hopefully without people trying to drop anvils on our head. Because nowadays, the world of animation is only limited by our own imaginations. And of course, the next software update.